السلام عليكم، يعطيكم العافية. أنا الدكتور محمود حماد. في محاضرة اليوم راح نكمل على موضوع الأريز إن سي شارب. موضوعنا اليوم عن الجاجد أري، فراح نتعرف على understand the concept of jagged arrays and the second objective of today's lecture, be able to create, populate and access jagged arrays. Okay. تعرفنا إنه there are, generally speaking, there are three types of arrays: one-dimensional array, multi-dimensional array and jagged arrays. So اليوم راح نتعرف على jagged arrays. راح نشوف كيف how to create it, how to access it and how to populate it. Okay. So last time تعرفنا على two-dimensional array أو multi-dimensional array. حكينا في multi-dimensional array بكون في عندنا different dimensions. Like for example, if we have two-dimensional array, which means that first dimension is rows, the second dimension is columns. And then بس هون الشيء اللي distinguish في المالتي دايمنشنال array إنه number of elements on each dimension are always the same. يعني number of elements, for example, in the first dimension هون 1 2 3 4 اللي هم number of columns 1 2 3 4. okay. فأنا إذا بدي structure، إذا ما بدي هذا structure إنه number of elements في كل row are the same. okay. إذا ما بدي هذا الشيء، بدي أنا إشي يكون في for example let's insert for example in the first row I need only two elements. For example, in the second row I need for example 3 elements, right? And for example in the third one I need for example 4 or 5 elements. Okay, so if I need something like this, so for example this would be row 1, this would be row 2 or row 0 or row 2, and this is for example row 3. So this is a different than multidimensional array. Here we have only 2 elements, here we have 3 elements, here we have for example 5 elements. Let's make this one 3 and this one 2. Okay, so now here we have 2 elements. So for example, if we're talking about integer jagged array, so here for example if we have 1 2, we have 2 elements. Here we have 1 2 3 elements. Here we have 1 2 3 4 5 elements, right? So a multi-dimensional array does not give me the ability to create this kind of array, and this kind of array is called jagged array. All right, so this is called jagged array. So in the jagged array, the only thing that we know is the number of rows. Okay, so now we only know the number of rows, but in each row there are different number of elements. There are different number of elements. Okay, so the way C# has implemented this one, okay, is jagged array is considered as an array of arrays. Okay, كيف يعني let's insert. So it's actually we have 3 elements: row 1, row 2, 3, row 3. So we have 3 elements, and each element is an array. So each element is an array. So this is the way it is actually implemented. So it's actually array where each element is another array. So those, which means that those rows is a one-dimensional array. So those 3 are one-dimensional array where each element so the way it is implemented is that it's actually sorry, let me bring this one to front. So the way it is implemented is that you just need to implement an array. So So the way it is implemented is that the jagged array is actually a one-dimensional array, and this is very important. So it's actually one jagged array is one-dimensional array. All right. It's a one-dimensional array that's pointing to an array of arrays. All right. So jagged array is one-dimensional array, okay, where each element is an array of different size, is an array. Okay. So jagged array is an array of is actually array of arrays. Okay. It's actually one-dimensional array. Now be specific. One-dimensional array of arrays of one-dimensional arrays. Okay. So this is the jagged array. All right. So now in C#, how can we create it? Go back to the Visual Studio. Now we have a class called Jagged Arrays, and we have a static method called Jagged Arrays lecture. This one too, lecture, and this static method has been invoked from the main. Okay. So now we need to know how to create it, how to access it, and how to populate a jagged array. Right? So now the data type of a jagged array. So last time we learned that this is a one-dimensional array, and each zero here makes a new dimension. So this is first dimension, second dimension. Here this one dimension. So this one is 1, 2, 3 dimension. So this is an array of 3 dimension. Now for jagged arrays, we use 2 square brackets. Okay, so this is the data type of a jagged array. Right? I would call it int jagged array equals. Let's create a method. Let's create a method that would create a jagged array of for us and return it back. All right. So now here I will say create a public static void. It's not void because we need to return. A jagged array. Okay, this one would create an integer jagged. And now the only thing I need with the jagged array is what? Is the length of this jagged array. So going back to our slide, the length of this jagged array is 1, 2, 3. So there are 3 elements. Each element is an array. So I only care about number of elements. So this is how it is implemented. Right? So now I need the length, and here I would create a jagged array called, for example, integer jagged equals new integer jagged. Now on the first one, I only need to specify the number of length. See, the compiler is not heavy only for the first square bracket. The second one is okay. So now here I want to create a jagged array of 3 elements. So this is a jagged array of 3 elements. Right? And now I need to return this integer jagged. Here, let's create an integer jagged array of 3 elements. Right now, we created this one. Now we need to print it out. Next setting. Void. I want to print this jagged array, this integer jagged array. It's called jagged array. So now I want to use the for loop for integer I equals 0, I less than, and jagged. Remember we have length and we have get length and of dimension. Okay, so remember that the jagged array has only one dimension. So this is the dimension. So if we see the length of this jagged array is 1, 2, 3, which is actually the number of elements in this jagged array. So there are 3 elements, which means that the length equals to 3. And now get length of 0, which means that the number of elements in the first dimension is 3. Now if we see get length of 1, which means the number of elements in the second dimension, this would raise an exception. All right, so the get length of 1, this would this would raise an exception for the jagged array because actually there is no second dimension. So here we have to use number of elements in the first dimension, this one, or length. So we use this one, or we use jagged array dot length, because jagged array dot length equal to jagged array dot get length of 0. All right. Jagged array dot get length of 1 would raise an exception because there is no other dimension. It's only one dimension. All right. So here I want print out this element, and the way I access the element in the jagged array, I will say jagged array of, for example, sorry. So now if I see jagged array of I, so this would be what? Jagged array of what? Of I. So for example here, jagged array of 0. So this one is jagged array of 0. And this one is jagged array of 1. This one is jagged array of 1. And this one is the jagged array of 2. Right? So jagged array of 0, it means what? It means an array, one-dimensional array. Right? So here, jagged array of I, this one actually is an array. I will say E, because this is the element. So jagged array of I is also is an array. So now if I want to print out the elements inside this array, I would use again for integer j equals 0, j less than e dot length. Now dot length or dot get length of 1. Now, dot length for the first one means 2. Dot get length for the second on the second iteration it means 3. Dot length on the third iteration it means 5. Okay. So now this way element dot length and then j plus plus. All right. Now we need to print out this element, which is e of j space. All right. So now this statement, this for loop, is to print out the elements inside those arrays. The elements inside those arrays, because each element in the jagged array is an array by itself. Right. So now let's print a new line, so we will print the elements on each jagged array in one line. So, okay, so this is the way we print the jagged array. Let's sorry, not here. Now we created. Let's print this jagged array. The integer jagged array. Let's print it out. Let's see what we get. Now, all right. So we got here null reference exception, null pointer exception, and that's actually we got this null pointer exception because we didn't initialize the array. So we just created a jagged array where there are 3 arrays, but those arrays they are pointing to null. They're not pointing to any array. We didn't initialize. We didn't create those arrays. Okay. So now before we print it out, we need to populate. We need to populate, or we need to create those arrays. So let's populate with this jagged array. Now we take integer jagged array, and now we need to. So now we let's use the for loop. Same as this one. Let's use the for loop. Now with this for loop, right? So now we took this for loop and we said that this one should be jagged array, not jagged arrays. Or this one jagged arrays. This one should be jagged array. We're dealing with only one array. Okay. Jagged array that get length. Now, all right. So this is jagged array. Now we got. So now we need to initialize this jagged array. This jagged array of I. So this jagged array of I is a pointer to we need to create an array. We need to let jagged array of 0 to point to an array. Okay. So this one equals new. If I leave it like this, integer array of, for example, I plus 1. It means that the first one would have an array of 2. Second one is an array of the first one would be an array of 1, then array of 2, then array of 3. Okay. Okay. So this the first one would be an array of 2, an array of 3, and this one array of 4, and not an array of 5. All right. This is just an example. All right. So this is in this case we just initialized, we just created an arrays. Those arrays will be 0. If we want to populate them with anything, we would say, like, for example, for integer I equal j equals 0, j is less than this jagged array of I dot length and j. Now what I need to do here with this for loop, I want to initialize this jagged array. I want to initialize those little arrays with some, for example, random numbers, sequence numbers, whatever. Okay, so let's initialize them, for example, with I plus j, right? So the first one would be, for example, I is 0 plus j is here is 0. So this is j for this one. The second one would be the first one would have 0 plus 0 would have 0, 0 plus 1 would have 1, right? Okay, and so on. The same thing. 1 plus 0 is 1, 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, right? And so this one would make this jagged array of I. So now we have this jagged array of I. I'm gonna say jagged array of I and j equals, okay, hopefully this one is not confusing. Jagged array of I, which means that this one, of j, which means that the element either this one or this one, right? Hopefully it's not confusing. Right, so now we initialize this, we populated this jagged array with some numbers. Okay, they could be like sequence numbers, random numbers, whatever number you want. All right. Populate. So now we need to invoke this method before we print out this array. So here is populate this jagged array, which is called integer jagged array, and then we need to print it out. Let's run our program. All right. I want to print the way we print the jagged array. I need let's print them one line and then new line for the new array. Let's run it again. All right. So here it's a jagged array with 3 elements. The first element is an array of 2 elements. Second element is an array of 3 elements, and the third element of the jagged array is an array of 4 elements. Okay. And those numbers are from 0 plus or I plus j. So 0 here, 1, then 1, 2, 3, and 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. Okay. Now, when we print the jagged array, we can use we can print the jagged array using a for each. I would say print jagged for each. We can use for each. So here we can use, instead of for external, use for each. Now for each element, we'll see what's the type for this element. Okay? For each element in this jagged array. Now forget about this one. That's good. Okay. So now for each var e in this jagged array. Now the elements inside the jagged array are what? Are arrays. Are arrays of type integer. Right. So now is a e is an array. If I want to print an array, I would use, for example, for each also, or for loop, whatever you want. For each integer, say I, I n e. Now for each element I, which is integer, in the array e. Okay. Now what I need to, I want to print out those elements, those I. Space, and for I want to get a new line after each array. So you can use print jagged for each or print jagged for each. All right, so let's see. Both of those will be the same output. All right, so now using for loop or for each is the same. You can use whatever convenient for you. All right, so now we also can use the object initializer to initialize. We can use the object initializer to initialize the jagged array, same way we use the object initializer to initialize the one-dimensional array and two-dimensional arrays. All right, and if you want to do that, now we can say, for example, now we have integer jagged array. I would say jagged2 equals, now the new integer. We don't want to give it a number of elements because I want to initialize using the object initializer. Now here, for example, I need same thing. I need like jagged array of 3 elements, and each element is also a array. So new integer array of those elements. So if I need, for example, 3 elements, so this means that there are 3 elements in this jagged array, 1, 2, 3, right? And each element is an array. For example, this would be 0, 1, this would be a b 2, 3, and this one would be, for example, let's say this one 2, 3, 4, and this one 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right? So this is a jagged array where it has 3 arrays, right? And where the first array has 2 elements, 3 elements, and then this one has 5 elements, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And you can keep doing that. Right? So if we print this jagged array, jagged2. Print out this array, it would be, let's put also a line to distinguish this jagged from the other jagged. All right, so now we have 0, 1, and then 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right? Right. Right. So again, if we print out here the jagged2 dot length, this would be the number of elements, which is actually 3. Right? Let's make sure 3. As you can see here, 3. Right? Now if we print out this jagged2 dot get length of 0, this would give us also 3. Let's run it. Make sure now get length of 0, 3, because it's only jagged array is an array of 1 dimension. Now if we print out the get length of 1, this would actually raise an exception. So this is a runtime exception. It says index out of range exception, right? It means because I don't have, so this is a runtime error, index out of range exception. Okay, so this gives us a runtime exception, right? So lastly, I think if I want to create a jagged array of string, it's the same concept. All right, str jagged equals new string of, for example, 5. Sorry, 5. So it's the same concept. Again, if I want to create a jagged array of type car, this is a car jagged array, new car. So it's the same concept. Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay. That's it for the jagged array. I hope you enjoyed the lecture and you learned out of it. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.